Hello and welcome again to Issues Unfiltered podcast. I am so excited. Okay, first of all, let me just say thank you. I see all the subscriptions and you're listening in. We're very happy that you found time to listen to this very interesting topic. Somebody say, this topic is deep, it's deep. But trust me, you need to hear it, not from anybody else, but from us. And so I want to say thank you. Last week was very invigorating. Our last episode, the founder of Dorothy Njemaze Foundation spoke to us extensively about awareness creation, sensitization, even starting it from the secondary schools and having those information out there. And we saw a lot of the feedback. Thank you, and the questions you've been asking, and that's why today's conversation is so important and so detailed and very interesting and lighthearted. Not too much drama, but I'm sure that the person that will be talking to us about it, he's very laid back, tells you as it is, doesn't care whose horse is gored, but trust me, you would get the message. So I'll be talking to the founder of the Network for Safeguarding Women's Health and Rights. She's a passionate gender advocate. She's been working at the intersection of women's health, rights and dignity, and she's with me today. And she's constantly pushing for and advocating for women's rights, looking at affect things that affect women and girls and bringing them to the limelight. And so I want to say thank you to Elizabeth Anwar Khan. She's here, of course, seated, nice and pretty. It's like her nice hair, really lovely. All right, so it's great to have you on today's conversation, Elizabeth, because honestly, I know that we've had this conversation behind cameras. We've had the heated arguments to be or not to be. But, when people hear of unsafe abortion, right, when they hear of, okay, for instance, our series theme is around consent and consequences. But beyond that, we want to just fight for how do you define, consent beyond the simple idea of yes or no? When people give consent, they just think, okay, some people say, oh, my no, what is my no? And what does yes mean? Does yes mean yes? And when people think of consent, they just think it's about sexual relations, but it bottles down to several other things, like even the question of, would you want this process done? How would you want it done? So just give us a bit of a background. Your hair is
So,
really nice though.
thank you. So, when it comes to, I'm assuming that I'm supposed to be talking from sexual and reproductive health and rights.
Absolutely.
So,
Absolutely.
when it comes to sexual and reproductive health and rights, especially around health, there's something called like medical misogyny, and people assume that it's just like from male health professionals, but it's not. It can also come from female health
Okay.
professionals. So I do a lot of work on social media because I believe that social media is the easiest way to reach a lot of people without spending a lot of money. So there's this doctor, and she seemed to be an OBGYN,
Okay.
so an obstetrician or gynecologist. And she said that people, who haven't had sex, for example, young girls who haven't had sex, and when a doctor says go and do a high vaginal swab, they shouldn't do it because it will cause problems for them in their future, and it would erode trust in their marriage.
So like what I'm hearing is it will break the hymen
Yes.
of some sort.
Yes. So from somebody trying to obtain health care, it's then just because this woman just made it all about a random man that this child has yet to even meet. And so you're saying that, so mind you, when a medical professional has said you should do a high vaginal swab, there's a reason they didn't just do a low one, because there is that regular one where you just put the swab stick and you're done. They want you to go closer to the cervix for a reason. So when you're she was basically telling parents and young girls that when they are told to do high vaginal swab, they shouldn't. Like they should kick against it. So when you say something like that, you're putting lives in danger. Because sometimes people think that things like yeast infection is simple. Or I had to it's on my, like, I had to show like yeast infection, like it's basically fungi. It's thick, this compact right there. So if the doctor is unable to really know what is causing your issue, how are they supposed to treat it? There was also even this thing where people say a lot of times, don't do HPV screening or all of that. Somebody died from, she had not had sex before, but she still died of cervical cancer.
Wow.
And yes, and it wasn't considered because of the whole she hadn't gone for screening, because they said, oh, you don't have to. But
Yes. To
there
make
is
you not to be a virgin anymore, break your
exactly,
hymen.
exactly. But this person was birthed from someone, you don't know if her mom had it. Like, you don't know. I think there are other factors to it. You don't know if she has come across those factors in her life, and many other things, right? So they don't know these things. And also sometimes people may not be having like vaginal penetrative sex. They could also be doing oral, which is, so, and then maybe swallowing the fluid, all of these things. Like, you don't know what is happening in people's lives. So to just say that just because you've not had, vaginal penetrative sex, you shouldn't do certain medical procedures, even when they're important for the health and well-being of that, is just putting an abstract being a future man that we all do not even know about, above the importance of that woman's health, which is not something that is done for men ever. Nobody says, oh, let's not do this so that in the future the wife will not say. It's really not even a consideration. But it just goes to tell you how much of women's bodies is being regulated. And there's a story recently. I have not read to really see what happened in that story because I don't want to be pissed. But the headline is basically that women, like the court ordered a cesarean session to be done for 2 women in the US. And I don't have any problem with cesarean sessions. In fact, I'm someone who is very comfortable with them. But to mandate somebody to have one is problematic. And I'm someone who I really believe in choice so much that even if somebody wants to make a choice and you think that choice is going to harm the person, kill the person, as long as you've told the person these things and the pros and the cons, and they choose death, let them choose it. That's what I believe, to be honest. So I
So
have
no need saving them if they've chosen to die.
yes. If if they've chosen to take their chances, my dear, ride on. We shall meet again in the great beyond.
Okay, so let's look at, I mean, I hear you, this is really deep. So let's look at it in the perspective of unsafe abortions. When you think about consent, but when you think about yes or no, because I'm looking at why it's important for us to begin to see consent as a deeper issue of power balance, protection of, women's rights versus, what the men want. So how do we look at it in that right?
Okay. So when it comes to abortion, it says the power has been taken away from women in so many ways. And the first way is knowledge. People are not aware about what, and apart from being the termination of pregnancy, people are not aware about what an abortion is. No other thing really. They just know that there's something like that. They are not aware of like the health part of it. They are not aware of anything really. So that was the first thing that was taken away from women, the power to have any form of knowledge. So now this greatly impairs women's ability to even decide.
Yeah.
I remember when I started to make content around abortion in late 2023 and early 2024, I made a video saying difference between unsafe abortion and safe abortion. And people came under the comments to say, is there safe abortion? It's a legit question for them because they have not been taught. And I know that there was a time when somebody put it in a textbook, talking about dangers of unsafe abortion, what unsafe abortion is, and all these sort of educative things. And a journalist came out and along with Parent Teachers Association to say, we don't want this in our books. And I'm like, you went to school, a journalist, that's what you say you are. But yet, look at what you're doing. And I looked at the page that was meant to scandalize us, in quotes. It was just proper knowledge saying you don't use this for an abortion, you don't use this, it's unsafe, these are the methods. If somebody has educated you, these are the methods, they said that it's teaching people, the person has in no way taught you. In fact, the very simple thing that somebody had once done when she was called and said, oh, why are you putting out content? To the police station, mind you, a women's organization sent a letter to one of the activists to come to the police station. That's an intimidation tactics, by the way. So she went with her lawyer, who was not any small regular lawyer as well. So let's go intimidation for intimidation. And when they went there, the police said that she was teaching people. And so she asked the policeman, okay, from what I've done now, tell me how to have an abortion. And he couldn't. It's as simple as that. So the first thing that has been taken away from women is even knowledge. I tried to do a vox pop one time. I went to the mall and there was this woman there and I told her, oh, would you rather, if you're a child, let's assume. And I always, with Nigerians, they're superstitious, so I had to use myself. Let's assume I am your child. So it's not just a random one of your children, right? And then I get pregnant and I'm 13, would you want me to have an abortion or would you want me to continue? Mind you, this is a well-to-do woman. She was like from her hair, you know that she has money. And so she said, oh, she would rather the child continues pregnancy. And I said,
At 13.
Yes. And I said, why? She said, oh, because abortion is dangerous. That was it. And so I told her, but do you know that abortion is 14 times safer than childbirth? And she said, wow, I have to look that up. She didn't know. So you see, she has made that choice not from a place of lack of knowledge, because she doesn't know that between this and this, there is going to be possible when you go to childbirth, there, 5,415 deaths per 100,000, as against women, like adult women, that is 1,047, which is also still not acceptable. But there's a higher chance of that. There is VVF, so many things. Then there is now also an interruption of education as against an abortion that is like very straightforward, especially when it is in the first trimester, of which 91% of abortions happen in the first trimester. So she didn't know all of these statistics. And there is a reason why she didn't know. The same reason why we did not know that there were female independence fighters.
Absolutely.
It's the same reason she did not know that abortion is safer for her teenage child than childbirth. That's just it. It purposely was removed from our curriculum. We're not taught about it. And so it's not just in like secondary schools. It also goes to medical professionals. One time we had a Twitter space and we're talking to a doctor and she said they're not taught about it in medical school like the way you're supposed to be taught in detail, because the laws and all of these like biases around it. So they're not really taught. You have to have like special interest before you are taught. I know in America they organize vacuum aspiration like trainings to train doctors. So you see, it's really excluded. Like and then you look at Nigeria, a place where it's 50,000 people to one doctor. This is not a gynecologist, just a doctor.
General practitioner, yeah.
Exactly. We don't know if it's a orthopedic doctor. We don't even know the kind of doctor already. And there's already that disparity. Then come to think of when it comes to specialists in terms of women's health, it's even lower. Then when you now go to the rural areas, mind you, even urban areas, there are places that don't have road. Now imagine the rural area. The Nigerian response to lack of knowledge is prayers. They begin. I've seen so many things in the comment section. Someone say, they told her it's between you and God now. It's really not that deep. It's really not that deep, but that's what people are being told. Like, it's between you and God and all of these things. So the first level is like knowledge. Then also the law.
And that also speaks to even taking this knowledge to maybe even churches, because they're also the ones that encounter these girls directly firsthand, and that's where their parents often report them to. So so in terms of socialization, finally, as we round up, what will be your message? Because you are very big on social media. How do we now pass this message of beyond yes and no, the right to abortion, the unsafe abortion, safe abortion, but with the ideal of promoting safety for women and girls?
Yes. So, and I need people to know that the only reason why there's something called safe abortion and unsafe abortion is because of the laws. Because, for example, when you talk about like fibroid surgery, there's nothing like safe and unsafe fibroid surgery because it's not banned. they didn't go and ban fibroid surgery in the hospital. If they ban it, that's when you see that happening, safe and
Yes.
unsafe. And then another thing I need people to understand is that 60% of women who seek for abortion services or abortion care already have children. And there was a study in Kenya, 60% of women who went seeking for an abortion were all married. All of them were married. Because sometimes people just assume that when you're married, your fertility will just listen to what you're saying. No. Fertility is fertility. Fertility doesn't care. Nature doesn't really care. If you like, you have just given birth, you in fact had a third degree episiotomy tear from vagina to anus, you can still, if you attempt, I don't know how they do it, but if you attempt and you are fertile, you get pregnant. Your body does not care whether you're properly healed or anything. So people need to understand that when it comes to abortion, right? And people, they always say, "Oh, is it morally right?" Yes, it's morally right. Just so that you know. And the question you should ask yourself is this: why do you think it is okay to force women and girls who do not want to continue a pregnancy to continue that pregnancy? Why is that normal? It makes no sense at all. It just makes no sense. So I think that is the question that everybody who is like, oh, why do you support abortion rights? You have to ask the person back. Why do you support forcing women to continue pregnancies against their will? Why is this something that you love? Simple.
I guess that's a rhetorical question because it needs a lot of answers. But I think the message is clear, really. It is consent of self. I mean, your choice, talked about choices, but I also hear you say, intimidation, manipulation, coercion could also affect people making those choices. So why would we want to force people, especially young girls who are at risk? I mean, just hearing you talk about this young 13
Everybody
years
really
old,
is at risk.
yes,
Even older women are at risk.
yes,
Whether you're in your 40s, your 30s, you're at risk. We've seen these Twitter stories now of women like dying from pregnancies
yes,
that they wanted. So if people are choosing to, oh, I want to be pregnant, and they're still dying, then how much more somebody, you're already forcing the person. So you're forcing somebody towards possible death, and you're just happy about it.
Well, we are not happy about it.
No, not you.
Yes, but I'm sure that's what we're trying to address here. So, so Elizabeth, I want to say thank you for this because it just opens up a new vista of conversation. You talked about the law, legality. You talked about consent beyond choices. And these are really critical areas that a lot of people wanted, overview on. And just listening to you again, I seem to think that a lot of stories, survivor stories, engagement would also be useful for people to also learn and hear firsthand what it's like, to be exposed and not to be exposed to information. So thank you so much for joining us today.
And some survivors,
yes,
they're not here to tell their story because they're dead.
yes, absolutely. And that's sad. And we don't want any more dying. And that's why we're saying this. So so this is one of the episodes I think that you can put on repeat because there's a lot of insights for us to take away from. I mean, at some point I just went into my flash think mode, and what just kept playing in my face is the narrative you just shared where a woman said she's 13, she cannot, have an abortion, is wrong. So I can imagine morality, socialization, and health, clashing with each other in all of this narrative. And I think that there's more to be said. Of course, you have to stay tuned with us. We'll bring you another episode next week. But for now, I want to say thank you. And please keep subscribing, keep listening. It's not that deep. I'll use Elizabeth's word. It's not that deep. It's the information we're passing, right? So see you again next week. I'm Adora Sydney Jack. It was nice doing this with you. Goodbye.
Goodbye.
Bye.